Duval lay on the damp forest floor, trembling, her breath shallow and uneven. The mist wrapped around her like icy fingers, the shadows leaning closer, their presence suffocating yet precise, as if the forest itself were judging her. Every wrong she had committed, the threats, the cruelty, the lies, the betrayals, echoed back at her in the haunting chorus of cries. She had never felt powerless before, and the sensation was unbearable. Lila knelt in the cabin doorway, clutching the charm to her chest, the baby moving violently as if aware of the danger and the power surging around them. Her voice, calm and resolute, carried over the clearing. "You cannot touch us," she said. "Your cruelty ends here. You will not harm anyone else." The mist swirled around her, thick and glowing, a barrier both protective and accusatory, reflecting Duval's misdeeds like a mirror of truth. Duval scrambled backward, hands pressing into the dirt, trying to escape the pressure of the shadows, the cries, the mist, but there was no escape. Branches bent and curved, forming walls and tendrils holding her in place. The forest, alive in ways she could never comprehend, seemed to judge her every move, every thought, every heartbeat. Her screams filled the clearing, but they were drowned out by the cries, the wailing chorus of every child she had harmed and every injustice she had committed. "Stop this, stop it!" Duval shouted, terror overtaking her rage. But the forest was relentless. Shadows rose taller, stretching and coiling around her. Mist swirled like liquid silver, wrapping tighter, glowing brighter. Lila pressed the charm to her chest, and the warmth pulsed outward, feeding into the protective presence. The cries resonated with the charm, with the baby, with Lila herself. A harmony of life, defiance, and justice. The first physical reckoning came swiftly. A branch, thick and solid, curved down from above, tapping Duval on the shoulder, not enough to harm her permanently, but enough to make her stumble and fall, eyes wide with terror. Another shadowed shape pressed against her back, a whisper of movement that made her flinch, and the mist coiled tighter around her arms and legs, restraining her without crushing. She struggled, but every movement met resistance. You cannot do this," Duval gasped, voice breaking. "I am the principal. I control everything." Lila rose to her full height, eyes glowing faintly in the mist. "Not here," she said, voice calm but firm. "Not anymore. You cannot control us. You cannot control life. And you cannot undo what you have done." The baby kicked again, hard, and Lila felt a surge of strength, as if the child was a conduit for the forest's power, amplifying her presence and courage. "We are alive," she whispered. "We will survive. And you will face the consequences of your cruelty." The mist swirled violently, and the cries echoed louder than ever, forming an invisible wall of sound and energy that pressed against Duval's chest, making it hard for her to breathe. Madame Isolde stepped forward, eyes glowing, and the mist responded, rising higher, flowing faster, enveloping Duval like a living tide. "Every act of cruelty," Isolde said softly, "will be weighed. Every life you've harmed will be remembered, and justice will be served." Duval's knees buckled as the shadows pressed tighter, the cries forming a symphony of retribution. She realized for the first time in her life that power without compassion, without morality, could be meaningless, dangerous even. Lila took a deep breath, feeling the baby shift inside her, a kick like lightning coursing through her. She raised her hands slightly, almost instinctively, and the mist obeyed, swirling in protective patterns, shielding them, her allies, and even the clearing itself from Duval's panic-driven attempts to fight back. "You will not touch us," she said again. "This ends now." And in that moment the forest seemed to respond to more than just Lila's words. It responded to her courage, her love, her defiance, and the life growing inside her. Branches bent, shadows moved, mist thickened, and the cries became a chorus of unstoppable force. Duval, trapped, terrified, and powerless, was forced to face the consequences of the life she had built on fear and cruelty. If you're captivated by the forest's power and Lila's courage, like, subscribe, and comment on what you think will happen next. Lila and the baby are about to face their most intense challenge yet. The mist thickened, swirling around Lila and the cabin like a living, breathing shield. Each gust of wind carried the mournful cries of the forest, voices of the unseen, echoing every injustice Duval had committed. The shadows curled and stretched, twisting into shapes both human and spectral, pressing her into a corner she could not escape. She clawed at the ground, trying to resist, but it was useless. The forest had claimed its prey. Lila stood in the doorway, the charm pressed to her chest. Every breath she took resonated with power. Every heartbeat synced with the baby's. She felt something awakening inside her. A force she had never known she could wield. "It ends tonight," she whispered, voice steady, firm, unwavering. The mist glimmered, moving as if alive, responding to her words, her courage, her defiance. Duval's face twisted in a mask of terror and rage. I am the principal. I am in control," she screamed, voice cracking. But the words fell flat against the unyielding presence of the forest. Branches snaked around her, lifting her just enough to make her stumble, shadows pressing against her chest like invisible hands. The cries of the forest rose louder, echoing off the trees, a haunting symphony of accusation and judgment. Madame Isolde stepped closer, green eyes glowing in the ethereal mist. "You cannot undo what you have done," she said softly, almost mournfully. "Every act of cruelty will be repaid. Every life you sought to destroy has a voice, and they are calling for justice." Duval screamed, thrashing, but the forest only tightened its grip. The mist coiled around her, wrapping like chains, binding her not just physically, but spiritually, forcing her to confront the weight of her sins. Lila took a deep, steadying breath, feeling the baby move fiercely inside her. "We are alive," she said aloud, voice carrying over the clearing, harmonizing with the cries. "We will survive. And you will face the consequences." The charm glowed with a brilliance she had never seen, warmth spreading through her chest and down into her limbs, grounding her in strength, resolve, and unyielding courage. Duval's struggles grew weaker as panic overtook rage. Every branch, every shadow, every echoing cry seemed to strike at her, exposing her cruelty, her lies, her obsession. She clawed at the mist, trying to break free, but it was impossible. The forest had become a mirror of her sins, unrelenting and merciless. Clara and Hope stayed close, hands gripping Lila's, eyes wide with awe and fear. It's alive," Clara whispered. Hope nodded, trembling. "It's punishing her." Lila nodded, drawing strength from their presence, from the life inside her, and from the power flowing through the forest. "It's justice," she whispered, "and we are its voice." A sudden gust of wind tore through the clearing, carrying the cries in a deafening crescendo. The mist twisted violently, enveloping Duval entirely, and the shadows pressed closer, forming indistinct but terrifying shapes around her. The forest seemed to speak as one, a voice older than time itself, resonating with power and authority. "You have harmed the innocent," the voice seemed to say, though it was not a single voice. It was the chorus of the forest, of the cries of every life Duval had threatened or destroyed. "You have fed on fear and cruelty. Now you face the reckoning." Duval screamed, stumbling backward, her knees hitting the dirt as terror consumed her. The forest pressed in from all sides, shadows wrapping her, branches restraining her, mist pressing against her face, and the cries forming an unbearable wall of sound. She could no longer deny it, she was powerless. The world she had tried to dominate had turned against her, and there was nowhere to run. Lila pressed the charm harder to her chest, feeling the baby respond, kicking fiercely as if feeding on her strength. "You cannot touch us," she said again, voice steady and unshakable. "We are alive. We will survive. And you will pay for what you've done." The mist glimmered brighter, the shadows solidified, and the cries surged to a deafening pitch. Duval's screams became incoherent, blending with the sound of the forest's judgment. The ground beneath her seemed to tremble, as if the earth itself were joining in the reckoning. And in that moment Lila realized they were not just protected, they were empowered. Every injustice, every cruelty, every lie Duval had ever committed would be accounted for, and the forest, the charm, the cries, and the life inside her were the instruments of justice. The reckoning has begun. Like, subscribe, and comment your predictions. What will happen to Duval next? Lila's power is growing, and the forest is showing no mercy. Duval's screams pierced the night, raw and desperate, echoing through the forest like a warning that terror can breed only in the hearts of the guilty. She clawed at the mist and branches, but each attempt was met with resistance. Every shadow seemed to press against her tighter, every whispering cry vibrating in her skull, forcing her to confront every misdeed she had ever committed. Lila stood in the cabin doorway, chest rising and falling, charm pressed firmly against her heart. The baby inside her kicked strongly, almost in rhythm with the pulsing glow of the charm. She could feel the energy of the forest feeding into her, into the unborn child, into the protective power that had surrounded them from the beginning. She had never felt so alive, so connected, so capable. "You will not escape what you've done," Lila said aloud, voice calm, steady, commanding. "You cannot hurt us. You cannot harm the innocent. And you will face what is yours to face." Duval's face twisted in rage and panic. I am the principal. Her words cut off as a shadow surged from the mist, coiling around her like a living whip. It forced her to her knees, wrapping her limbs, pinning her to the damp earth. Branches bent and twisted, restraining her without crushing, while the mist pressed against her like icy fingers, filling her lungs with cold and fear. Madame Isolde stepped forward, green eyes gleaming, voice calm and unwavering. "Every act of cruelty, every lie, every threat, has consequences," she intoned. "The forest remembers, and now the forest acts. You are powerless." The cries of the forest rose to a deafening crescendo, almost deafening, each note resonating with justice, with vengeance, with the grief of every life Duval had sought to control or destroy. She struggled, but the forest was relentless. The shadows coiled tighter, branches pressed in, and the mist glimmered with the weight of the forest's wrath. Lila felt a surge of strength, her own pulse merging with the rhythm of the cries, the mist, and the life within her. "We are alive," she whispered, voice echoing through the clearing, harmonizing with the forest's chorus. "We will survive. And you will not hurt anyone else." Duval's struggles grew weaker, panic overtaking rage, her screams turning to sobs. She realized too late that her obsession, her cruelty, her relentless pursuit of control had led her here. Trapped, powerless, judged by forces she could not see, could not understand. She was facing the reckoning she had always ignored, and it was absolute. Branches wrapped tighter around her legs, pulling her down, while shadows leaned over her, almost tangible in their pressure. The mist pressed against her chest, making it impossible to draw a full breath. And the cries, pierced through every lie, every threat, every act of terror she had inflicted on the innocent. Lila stepped forward, charm glowing brighter than ever, warmth flooding her chest and limbs. The baby kicked fiercely, and she felt the energy surge through her, through the mist, through the shadows. "It's over," she said softly, yet with iron in her voice. "It ends tonight. You will answer for every life you've tried to destroy." And in that moment the forest acted. Branches lifted, shadows pressed, mist coiled, and the cries intensified, forming a wall of relentless power. Duval's body shuddered as if the very forest was striking her, each motion bringing the weight of every wrong she had committed. She screamed, a sound of pure terror and regret, collapsing fully to the ground, completely subdued, utterly powerless. Lila pressed the charm to her chest, taking a deep, steadying breath. "Justice isn't about vengeance," she whispered, voice calm, almost gentle. "It's about protecting life, protecting the innocent, and ensuring the wronged are heard. And that is what we've done." The mist swirled around her, shadows coiled protectively, and the cries softened slightly, like a lullaby of justice fulfilled. Clara and Hope approached cautiously, eyes wide, still trembling. She's gone," Clara whispered. Hope nodded, voice barely audible. "The forest, it took control. She can't hurt anyone else." Lila exhaled, feeling the charm warm against her chest, the baby still kicking fiercely. She realized fully that the power she had tapped into, the bond with the forest, the charm and the life within her, was not just protection. It was empowerment, a force that could rise whenever cruelty and injustice threatened innocence. And tonight it had been enough. The forest has spoken, and justice has begun. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. How do you think Lila's life will change after this reckoning? The story is far from over, and the consequences are only just beginning to unfold. The clearing grew quiet, the mist slowly lifting, leaving the damp forest floor bathed in the silver glow of the moon. The shadows that had tormented Duval receded, curling back into the trees, leaving only a protective circle around Lila, Clara, and Hope. The cries, once deafening, softened to a distant, mournful echo, a reminder that justice had been done, but the forest's vigilance would never sleep. Lila sank to her knees, pressing the charm to her chest, feeling the warmth pulse through her with the baby moving insistently inside her. She let out a long, shuddering breath, the weight of the night settling in her bones. "We survived," she whispered softly, voice trembling yet steady. We really survived. Clara and Hope came closer, gripping her hands, tears streaking their faces. You were incredible, Hope murmured, voice choked. I've never seen anything like it. Lila shook her head, still in awe herself. It wasn't me, she said softly. It was everything working together, the charm, the forest, the baby, and maybe even us. She gave a small shaky laugh. We weren't alone, not for a second. Duval lay unconscious nearby, tangled in branches and mist, her authority shattered, her cruelty undone by forces she could never comprehend. The matron, Celine, and a few of the academy staff who had accompanied Duval in fear now approached cautiously, eyes wide, unsure how to respond. None dared intervene. The forest's presence was palpable, heavy with judgment and warning. Madame Isolde appeared beside Lila, her green eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. The reckoning is complete, she said softly, voice calm and measured. The forest has spoken. But this is only the beginning. The child you carry, she is special. She will carry the mark of protection, of justice. The world will try to challenge her someday, but she will always have this bond, this strength. Lila pressed the charm tighter, feeling the baby kick in response. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered, voice trembling. I want to protect her. Isolde placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. You already are. You've done more than most could even imagine. You've survived cruelty, betrayal, and injustice, and you've emerged stronger. That is what matters. That is the beginning. Clara stepped forward, eyes scanning the clearing, taking in the aftermath. Do you think people will believe us? She asked softly. Hope shook her head. Does it matter? The forest has seen everything. Justice doesn't need witnesses. And neither do we. Lila nodded slowly, finally letting herself exhale fully. As dawn began to break, casting a pale golden glow through the mist, Lila realized that the forest, the charm, and the cries had not only protected her, they had transformed her. She was no longer just a frightened girl hiding from the cruelty of others. She was a protector, a survivor, and a mother-to-be with power she was only beginning to understand. She looked down at her chest, feeling the life growing within her, and whispered softly, "We'll protect each other. Always." The forest seemed to hum in response, the mist curling around her like a gentle embrace. The shadows receded into the trees and the clearing was peaceful once more. But Lila knew the forest would always watch, always protect, always remind the world that cruelty has consequences. And somewhere deep in the trees, she could swear she heard a soft, satisfied whisper in the wind, as if the forest itself was promising that those who sought to harm the innocent would never escape its gaze. If you're captivated by Lila's journey, like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think the baby's future will be like? Now that she's marked by this protective power? The story is far from over, and the next chapter is only just beginning. By the next morning, word of the night's events had begun to seep into the nearby village. Whispers traveled quickly. Strange cries in the forest, lights moving unnaturally in the mist, and the sudden shocking collapse of the feared academy principal Duval. People spoke in hushed tones, unsure whether it was a warning from the spirits or punishment for her cruelty. Lila, exhausted but alert, remained in the cabin cradling the charm. The baby kicked inside her, strong and insistent, as if urging her to remain vigilant. Clara and Hope prepared a small fire, brewing tea and collecting fresh water. Their eyes kept darting to the edges of the clearing, where shadows still lingered, the mist hovering faintly like a protective veil. "Do you really think she'll come back?" Clara asked quietly, nodding toward the unconscious Duval. Hope shook her head. "Not like this. The forest won't allow it. Whatever power was awakened last night, it's permanent. Duval can't challenge it, not anymore." Lila pressed the charm to her chest, feeling the pulse of energy and life radiating through her. "I know," she said softly, voice calm but carrying an unshakable certainty. "But we still have to be careful. The world is full of people like her. Cruel, selfish, blind to justice. We'll never be completely safe. But we can protect what matters." Duval had been carried back to the academy by a few terrified staff members. By mid-morning, news spread that she had confessed her cruelty publicly. Under duress, yes, but also under a strange compulsion, as though the forest itself had forced her to face the truth. Teachers, staff, and the few students who remained witnessed her trembling admission of guilt, shame, and complicity. Rumors swirled. Some said it was the forest's power, some said it was madness, but all agreed the consequences had been swift and inescapable. Back in the clearing, Lila walked slowly to the edge of the trees, holding the charm close. The mist lingered around her like a living thing, curling around her legs, brushing against her cheeks. She whispered softly to the baby inside her. "This is our home now. They can't touch us here. We're protected." The baby kicked in response and she smiled faintly, realizing that even in the face of danger, they were safe together. Clara and Hope came to stand beside her, their presence steadying. "Do you think it's over?" Clara asked quietly, voice trembling. Lila shook her head, her gaze scanning the forest. "No," she said honestly, "but it doesn't have to control us. We've survived cruelty, betrayal, and danger. We've survived the reckoning. Now we have to survive life together." The forest seemed to respond to her words. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, the mist shimmered softly, and the distant cries that had once been terrifying now sounded almost soothing. A reminder that justice had been served, but vigilance would always remain. Lila felt a deep, calming connection with the forest, as if it had accepted her, protected her, and bonded with the life she carried. That afternoon, she began preparing the cabin for the life that was soon to arrive. Simple furnishings, food, water, all arranged with care. She spoke quietly to the baby, telling stories, whispering promises of protection and love. The forest outside seemed to lean closer, shadows shifting protectively, mist curling around the clearing like a soft, protective barrier. The news of Duval's public confession spread to surrounding towns. Her fall from power became a cautionary tale. Cruelty has consequences and injustice will not go unpunished. Lila's story, whispered carefully among villagers, became one of hope, a tale of survival, resilience, and the mysterious protective power of the forest. As the sun set that evening, casting golden light over the mist, Lila stood at the cabin doorway, charm in hand, baby kicking inside her. Claire and Hope were nearby, keeping watch. The forest was quiet, but the memory of the cries lingered, a reminder that vigilance, courage, and compassion were the true sources of power. Lila smiled faintly, feeling a calm determination settle over her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. If Lila's story has captivated you so far, like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. How do you think the baby will grow with the forest's protection? The journey is far from over, and the next chapter promises even more intensity. The nights grew longer, mist curling around the cabin with the same protective presence that had saved them. Lila could feel the baby moving constantly, each kick a reminder of the life growing within her and the power she now carried. The forest outside hummed softly, a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, a quiet reassurance that she and her child were not alone. Labor came suddenly, in the middle of a moonless night. Lila gritted her teeth against the pain, pressing the charm tightly to her chest as Clara and Hope stayed close, holding her hands, murmuring words of encouragement. "You can do this," Hope whispered, eyes brimming with tears. "You've survived worse. You can survive this too." Lila nodded through gritted teeth. "We survived together," she said, voice trembling yet firm. The mist outside thickened, swirling around the cabin windows, and the shadows seemed to lean closer, almost as if waiting to witness the birth of something new, something powerful. Hours passed in a blur of pain and determination. Lila breathed through each contraction, drawing strength from the charm, the forest, and the life within her. She whispered to the baby, over and over, promises of protection, love, and justice. "We are safe," she said, voice soft but commanding. "We will protect each other. Always." Finally, with one last surge of effort, the baby entered the world. Lila collapsed back, gasping for breath, clutching the tiny, wriggling body against her chest. It was a girl, small, fragile, but with a presence that seemed to radiate power even in her first moments. The charm's glow pulsed in rhythm with the baby's heartbeat, the mist around the cabin responding with a gentle, luminous shimmer. Clara and Hope stood in awe, tears streaming down their faces. She's perfect," Clara whispered. Hope nodded, voice trembling. "Not just perfect, she's extraordinary." Lila held the child close, feeling warmth and energy radiate between them. And then she noticed it, the first subtle changes, tiny yet unmistakable. The baby's eyes shimmered faintly in the darkness, reflecting the glow of the charm. A soft, low wail escaped her lips, almost human, almost otherworldly, vibrating with power and warning. Madame Isolde stepped into the cabin silently, her green eyes observing the newborn. "The child carries the forest's blessing," she said softly, voice steady but filled with awe. "But also the burden of justice. She is part of the protection now. She is part of the reckoning, part of the power that will ensure no cruelty goes unchecked." Lila stared down at her daughter, a mix of awe, fear, and determination flooding through her. "We will teach you," she whispered. "We will protect you. And we will survive together. Always." The baby kicked, small yet insistent, as if acknowledging her mother's words and the connection to the forest that would define her existence. Outside, the mist shifted, shadows bending slightly closer, almost protective, almost reverent. The cries that had once heralded punishment were now softer, almost like a lullaby, weaving around the cabin. The forest had acknowledged the birth, had marked the child as its own, and in that quiet, silver-lit night, Lila realized something profound. Her daughter was more than just a child. She was a symbol, a protector, a beacon, a living reminder that cruelty and injustice would never go unchallenged. The first hints of what would later be called Bush Baby stirred in the newborn's presence, the fusion of human innocence and spectral power, subtle yet undeniable. Lila could feel it, a flicker of something primal, protective, otherworldly. She pressed the charm to the baby's chest, whispering, "We are one. You are safe. And together we will face whatever comes." The child has arrived, and her power is already awakening. Like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think the baby will become as she grows under the forest's protection? The story is entering its most supernatural and intense phase yet. The days after the birth passed in a strange protective calm. Lila watched her daughter sleep, small chest rising and falling, the charm pressed gently against her tiny frame. The forest seemed to pulse in time with the baby's breath. Mist curling around the cabin and shadows bending protectively, as if aware that this child was no ordinary human. From the first morning, it became clear the baby sensed the world differently. Even when Lila stepped outside, carrying her carefully, the baby's cries or soft coos would shift, almost commanding the mist and shadows. Small branches swayed unnaturally, leaves fluttered in precise patterns, and distant forest sounds seemed to mimic her presence. Lila's heart tightened. This was more than instinct. This was power, an echo of the forest itself. Clara and Hope continued their support, but even they began to sense the strange energy. "Look," Clara whispered one morning, pointing to a fallen tree branch that had lifted upright, as if moved by invisible hands. She did that?" Hope shook her head, voice trembling. "It's like she's controlling it. Not consciously maybe, but somehow she's connected." Lila nodded, eyes wide with wonder and caution. "The forest and the charm are guiding her, protecting her, shaping her power. But we need to be careful. This energy is raw, and the world beyond the clearing isn't ready to understand it." Outside the cabin, the forest began sending its first warnings. Hunters who wandered too close reported eerie cries echoing in the mist, figures moving in the shadows, whispers that froze their blood. Animals acted strangely. Deer halted mid-step, birds flew away in panic, and the wind carried faint cries that sounded almost human. The village murmurs grew. Strange sounds in the woods, sudden misfortunes, and the uneasy feeling of being watched. Lila realized the forest was extending its protection outward, warning the world not to threaten her or the baby. One evening, as the sun set in a golden haze, Lila carried the baby to the edge of the clearing. Mist curled around them like fingers, soft yet unyielding. She whispered to her daughter, "You are safe. The forest will protect you, and your power will grow. But we must teach you control, patience, purpose." The baby cooed, tiny fingers curling, and the mist shifted as though acknowledging the promise. Suddenly a sound broke through. The distant crack of a branch snapping, someone moving toward the cabin. Lila's heart clenched. She pressed the charm tighter, whispering to her daughter, "Stay calm. We are one. You are protected." Shadows rose from the forest floor, curling into subtle shapes that blocked the path, unseen yet unmistakable to anyone approaching. The figure stopped abruptly, eyes wide, fear evident in every step. Duval had returned, not with malice yet, but with desperate curiosity, still haunted by the previous night's reckoning. The forest responded instantly, mist thickening, shadows pressing closer. The baby stirred, tiny eyes flashing faintly in the dim light, and a soft, mournful cry escaped her lips, enough to chill the intruder's blood. Lila stepped forward, calm but resolute. "This is your warning," she said, voice carrying clearly. "Do not come any closer. The forest, the charm, and the life you see here are not yours to touch. You will not harm us again." The cry intensified, soft at first, then rising with a power that reverberated through the clearing, through the trees, and into the distant village. Duval's knees buckled, fear overtaking every thought. She stumbled backward, eyes wide, and the mist closed around her path, guiding her away from the cabin, away from the child. Clara whispered, voice trembling. She did that, the baby." Lila nodded, heart pounding with awe and caution. "Yes," she said softly. "She is not just a child. She is a guardian already. But she's still learning, still growing. And we have to guide her every step of the way." The forest seemed to hum in agreement, the mist curling gently, the shadows retreating slightly but never fully. The baby nestled against Lila, cooing softly, eyes flickering faintly as if acknowledging the protective power that now flowed through her veins. Lila realized the truth. This was only the beginning. The world beyond the forest would test them. But with courage, vigilance, and the forest's guidance, they would endure. The baby's powers are awakening, and the forest's protection is growing stronger. Like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think will happen the first time the world challenges them? The story is reaching its most supernatural and thrilling phase yet. By the following week, rumors from the village had grown into whispered fears. Travelers, hunters, and even wandering villagers spoke of strange cries in the mist, lights flickering deep in the forest, and shadows moving with intelligence. Some claimed to have glimpsed a small, almost inhuman figure darting between the trees, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The forest was no longer just a protective barrier. It was becoming a legend, and the baby at its center was the spark. Lila noticed subtle changes each day. The baby's cries had a strange effect on the world around her. Birds fell silent when she whimpered, small animals froze or scattered, and even the wind seemed to bend to her presence. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, the mist would thicken around the cabin unprompted, as though the forest itself was responding to her daughter's mood. Clara and Hope watched in awe and growing concern. She's not just powerful," Clara whispered one night, voice trembling. "She's something else. Something more." Lila nodded, holding the baby close. "Yes," she murmured. "But she's still human. She feels, she loves, she learns. And we have to guide her, or this power could overwhelm her. And the world outside will never understand it." One afternoon, Duval, still humiliated and terrified from her previous encounter, returned to the edge of the forest, this time with a few armed villagers who thought they could subdue whatever was causing the disturbances. Their approach was loud, clumsy, and brimming with fear. The moment they stepped onto the forest path, the mist thickened violently, twisting and rising to obscure their vision. Shadows stretched unnaturally, bending in impossible ways, forming ghostly shapes between the trees. The baby stirred in Lila's arms. Her small cries started softly, almost human, then rose in intensity. The mist pulsed with every sound, coiling like living tendrils that pushed the intruders back, unseen but impossible to ignore. Birds screeched, small branches snapped in their direction, and the forest itself seemed to grow heavier, denser, threatening and unyielding. Duval's eyes widened in terror. I didn't," she stammered, but the baby's cry cut her off. It wasn't just a cry. It was a warning, resonating in the chest, rattling bones, filling the mind with an unshakable sense of dread. The villagers froze, fear rooting them to the spot as the mist pressed closer. Shadows coiled protectively around the cabin, and the cries echoed with impossible depth. "This is your last warning," Lila said, voice steady, calm, yet charged with authority. "Do not come any closer. You cannot harm us. You cannot harm her. The forest will protect her, and it will punish anyone who tries to do what you have done." The baby kicked and cooed, her eyes flickering with a strange, unearthly glow, and the intruders felt it. A pulse of power that was both terrifying and undeniable. The villagers stumbled backward, fleeing in panic, while Duval fell to her knees, sobbing, fear breaking her entirely. The baby's cries softened slightly, cooing in her mother's arms, but the pulse remained. A warning, a promise, a symbol. The legend of Bush Baby, the small half-human, half-supernatural child who could command the forest, who could punish cruelty, was born in that moment. As the forest calmed, Lila held the baby to her chest, feeling the steady, powerful rhythm of life and energy flowing between them. "You see," she whispered, "you are more than human, but you are also ours. Together, we will protect the innocent, and no cruelty will ever go unpunished." The mist slowly receded, shadows retreated into the trees, and the clearing grew calm. But the echoes of the baby's cries lingered, spreading through the forest and beyond, carrying a warning. Injustice would not go unnoticed, and the forest protector had arrived. The legend of Bush Baby has begun. Like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think will happen the next time someone dares to challenge Lila and her daughter? The story is reaching its most intense supernatural stage. The days grew darker, the forest thicker, and the air heavier with the power that seemed to emanate from Lila and her daughter. Each sunrise brought subtle but undeniable changes. Leaves that whispered warnings, shadows that shifted with intent, and mist that responded almost instinctively to the baby's moods. Lila realized that their bond was no longer passive. It was active, powerful, and frighteningly precise. She spent hours each day teaching the child, speaking softly as she held her in the clearing. "You must listen," Lila whispered, eyes bright with determination. "Feel the forest, its heartbeat, its voice. You are part of it, but you must also learn control. Power without guidance is dangerous." The baby's tiny hands reached out, brushing leaves and branches, and the forest responded. Small branches lifted, the mist curled closer, shadows shifted protectively, and even the distant cries of unseen creatures harmonized with the baby's coos. Clara and Hope watched from nearby, awe and fear mingling in their expressions. "She's learning fast," Hope murmured. "Faster than any child should. Faster than anyone could imagine." Clara nodded, voice trembling. "But she's not just learning. She's evolving, becoming something more." Lila's lips pressed into a thin line, chest heavy with the weight of responsibility. "Yes, and we must guide her every step of the way. She is the forest protector now, and one day, she will be its voice for justice." Outside the clearing, the forest grew restless. Hunters and travelers who wandered too close experienced sudden chills, disorientation, and an overwhelming sense of dread. One man claimed he saw a small half-human figure dart between the trees, eyes glowing, mist curling around her like a cloak. Those who mocked the tales of Bush Baby or sought to challenge the child found themselves lost, trapped in thick fog, forced to retreat in fear or desperation. The legend spread, whispered across villages, growing in both terror and reverence. One evening, a group of villagers, emboldened by curiosity and disbelief, attempted to approach the cabin. Lila stepped into the clearing, holding the baby close. The mist surged around her like a tidal wave, thick and impenetrable. Shadows coiled and shifted, creating illusions that terrified the intruders. The baby's cry rose, soft at first, then sharp, resonant, almost human yet impossibly deep. The ground seemed to vibrate with the sound, echoing through the forest and shaking the very air. The villagers froze, eyes wide, hands trembling. It's real," one whispered. "The legends, they're true." Lila's voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "Leave now. You cannot harm her. You cannot harm us. The forest protects its own, and it will punish anyone who seeks to destroy innocence." The baby's eyes glimmered faintly in the dim light, a soft glow that carried authority, warning, and undeniable power. Fear overtook the villagers, and they scattered into the forest, disoriented, tripping over roots, lost in the thick mist. Lila watched, chest tight but resolute, as the clearing fell silent once more. She hugged the baby close, whispering, "You are safe, and you are powerful. But power must always be tempered with care. Always." Clara stepped forward, voice trembling. "Do you think she's ready for what's coming? The world beyond this forest, it won't be kind." Lila nodded, gaze sweeping over the dense trees. "No, she's not fully ready. But she's strong and she has us. And when the time comes, she will rise to protect what must be protected. She will become the guardian the world never expected, the Bush Baby." The forest seemed to hum in agreement, mist curling and shadows shifting gently, protective, vigilant. Lila felt the bond deepen. The child's life, the charm, and the forest now intertwined in ways that were undeniable, unstoppable, and eternal. The legend was no longer just a whisper. It was real, living, and powerful. A force that would endure far beyond the clearing, far beyond the forest, and far beyond the reach of cruelty. The baby is growing into the forest's true protector. Like, subscribe, and comment. How do you think Bush Baby's legend will shape the world beyond the forest? The climax is almost here, and the story is reaching its most thrilling moment. The night was thick with mist, denser than any Lila had seen before. The forest seemed alive in every sense. The wind whispered warnings, shadows twisted like serpents, and the trees themselves groaned in anticipation. Tonight, Lila knew the reckoning would reach its final stage. Duval, desperate, had rallied a small group of villagers once more, their greed and curiosity blinding them to the dangers. Clutching the baby to her chest, Lila stepped into the clearing, eyes blazing with quiet authority. Clara and Hope flanked her, tense but ready. The forest responded instantly. Mist swirled into barriers, shadows stretched into intimidating shapes, and distant, echoing cries filled the night air. The baby cooed softly, eyes glowing faintly, as if sensing the gathering threat. Duval and her group emerged from the fog, torches flickering weakly in the oppressive mist. Fear was etched on their faces, but arrogance still clung stubbornly to Duval. "You can't hide forever," she spat, voice trembling with rage. "This child, this thing, it's nothing. You're just a frightened mother hiding in the woods." The baby stirred violently, tiny fists clenching. The mist thickened, forming a living wall that separated the intruders from the clearing. Branches bent low, shadows formed towering shapes, and a soft, chilling wail rose from the baby's throat, half human, half otherworldly, reverberating through the forest like a command from some ancient power. Duval's knees buckled immediately. Her companions froze, terror overtaking their courage. Every instinct screamed to run, but the forest would not allow it. Shadows pressed against them, roots twisted beneath their feet, and the cries of the baby, and of the unseen spirits of the forest, echoed in their minds, filling them with a deep, paralyzing dread. "You brought this on yourselves," Lila said, voice calm, unwavering, carrying the authority of the forest itself. "You chose cruelty. You chose greed. You chose to harm the innocent. And now you will face the consequences." She pressed the charm to her chest, feeling a surge of energy flow through her, into the baby, into the very ground beneath them. The forest seemed to answer, mist twisting violently, shadows stretching like living beings, and the air thickened with a supernatural force. The intruders screamed, stumbling backward, some tripping over roots, some thrown off balance as if invisible hands had struck them. Duval's shrieks cut through the chaos, full of terror, regret, and disbelief. The baby's cries rose louder, echoing with a strange, haunting resonance that seemed to pierce the soul. Branches whipped, shadows lunged, and the mist coiled tightly around Duval, lifting her slightly, restraining her movements. "No, I didn't mean," she wailed, but the forest was merciless. Every act of cruelty, every lie, every betrayal she had committed was laid bare, reflected back in a force she could not escape. Clara and Hope watched in awe, whispering, She's controlling it all. It's like she's commanding the forest itself." Lila's voice was steady as she held the baby close. "Yes, she is the protector now. She is the reckoning. And nothing, no cruelty, no injustice, can stand before her." The cries intensified, and the forest seemed to pulse with life, shaking the very ground beneath them. Duval collapsed fully to her knees, her body trembling, sobbing, the power of the forest and the baby overwhelming every ounce of her arrogance and defiance. Her companions fled, stumbling blindly into the mist, some never returning, lost to the forest forever. The clearing fell silent, save for the soft coos of the baby and the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Lila cradled her child, feeling the warmth of life, power, and protection coursing through them. The legend of Bush Baby, the half-human, half-supernatural guardian born from injustice, pain, and the forest's power, was complete. The forest hummed softly, shadows curling protectively around the cabin, mist lingering like a gentle guardian. Lila looked down at her daughter, whispering, "This is your world now. You will protect the innocent. You will punish cruelty. And together we will survive." The baby cooed, a faint glow in her eyes, the symbol of power, justice, and unyielding protection. Duval was never heard from again. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of a mysterious child in the forest, a protector who punished cruelty and guarded the innocent. The legend of Bush Baby spread, growing into a tale of warning and reverence, whispered across villages and forests alike. Years later, Lila, now older and wiser, would teach her daughter the ways of protection, compassion, and justice. Together, they became the guardians of the forest, the embodiment of the reckoning that would never sleep. Bush Baby's legend endured, a reminder that cruelty carries consequences, innocence deserves protection, and some powers, born of love, pain, and justice, can never be defeated. The story of Bush Baby reaches its epic conclusion. Like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think the future holds for Lila and her extraordinary daughter? Share your thoughts and keep the legend alive.